everyone. Alisha Merlo here, and we have another exciting take with Countdown to GVAS. And I am thrilled to be able to be here with one of my favorite industry humans, Tiphany Lopez, and she is the Chief Growth Officer at Aesthetic Record and is also just a maven of all things in our industry. I literally had the biggest girl crush on this woman when I met her a few years ago and our paths crossed, and I'm like, I need to have you in my life. And we were trying to manufacture ways we could collaborate and work together. And we've had, actually in 2020, the blessing has been I've had many opportunities to spend time with this incredible human being. She is so talented, and I'm thrilled to have you here with me, Tiphany. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm excited to be here and get to be interviewed by you and not interviewing you for a change. It's fantastic. Thanks for having me.
The role reversal here.
Yeah.
So before we dive into your session or panel that you're going to be on at GVAS, for those who don't know you, first of all, where you've been, but for those who don't know you, can you share a little bit about your background?
Sure. So as you mentioned, I'm the Chief Growth Officer at Aesthetic Record, and we are truly an end-to-end software system for EMR and also practice management. So we kind of do everything for practices in aesthetics, which includes obviously med spa, derm, plastic surgery. And we've grown really since I've met you, Alisha. Frankly, we've grown from a couple hundred accounts to about 2,500 accounts, 8,000 users worldwide. So we're coast to coast and we're global. So there's a lot going on there. As far as me personally, I also work with Aesthetic Next. We just had a big virtual conference. I co-direct that event where we went our first time ever virtual with a lot of content, a lot of speakers, live injection. So GVAS, God bless you all for doing this. I know how hard this is. And then just before coming into this, I've worked in the industry as a whole for about 7 years, doing a lot of training on the manufacturing side, selling products, selling toxins and fillers. So I've kind of been part of this whole thing from lots of different angles. And I love being in aesthetics. I think we have a lot of runway in our industry. And it's a very exciting time right now as we transition from COVID, because everything is changing. And so it's those who survive and are resilient, I think will really prosper long term here.
I think so too. And maybe some of that growth that you just shared at Aesthetic Record was a gift from COVID, right? Because
Absolutely.
Practices had to pivot to virtual and digital to be able to just, survive, let alone thrive. And I have to give a shout out to you and your team. I have no stock, no financial investment in Aesthetic Record, but really am impressed because I've been in the industry a long time as well by companies that just do right by either the circumstance or by their customers. And I really saw how Aesthetic Record just rolled out. And I've done software development before. It's another one of my, hats I wore in the past.
Fitting talent.
So many features and so many things that were meaningful to how practices really pivot quickly. So kudos to you for sure.
Thank you. We have a no-touch toolkit, to your point, that during COVID we built telehealth. We built a full touchless POS system, check-in, check-out, document management. We had to really go deep in our well and figure out things we could do to make our really high-touch system no touch, but still preserve the patient experience and the seamless part of our practices, from really check-in to check-out. So it was tough. And at the same time, to your point, we had all these people realizing quickly they needed a new system, either because they wanted a lower cost, higher value, or because paper wasn't going to cut it, or they just needed to really figure out their back-end KPIs and metrics they could change and calibrate their business. So we helped them to really think about benchmarking from an entire practice perspective, from staff to inventory to marketing, really everything that they needed to really move forward. So it was a busy time, but we did survive it, and we are hopefully better for it long term. We have a big group of amazing new clients because of it, and we're grateful for that.
That is exciting. And you talked about benchmarks and analytics and numbers. If you've ever had a chance, speaking to everybody watching, to sit in on one of Tiphany's lectures, whether it's through Aesthetic Record or at the conferences she's often asked to speak or be on panels, nothing that comes forward does not have data behind it. And I think that's also just because you have that mind, you want to proof source it. And I'll toot your horn a little bit, not only are you brilliant, just to talk about innovations and ideas and execution, but you are also super book smart, holding your own PhD, which is so impressive. And I just got to give you kudos from woman to woman to be able to seek out that highest level of education, to be Dr. Tiphany Lopez. I think that's pretty cool. And yes, I'm fangirling you guys, sorry.
I appreciate that. You know, at the end of the day, Alicia, math doesn't lie. I just feel like data and math, you can rest your laurels on that in a sense. And so I just left a compensation management talk today, really talking about how you pay your people and these objective measures that, you know, month over month, trend over trend, really decide how you coach and develop your staff. And if you don't have numbers, how do you coach to something? How do you decide growth plans and how to improve their performance? So I'm a big data nerd, to your point. I love my math and my numbers, but I think if we all get to that part in our industry or get to that direction, we'll see a much more consistent growth pattern across really all the practices in aesthetics.
Yeah, it helps to drive decisions. It helps to drive decisions, right? And what you blend really nicely, I think, in everything that you teach is that, yes, you've got the numbers, the math doesn't lie, but on the flip side of that, you're always considering how that will impact those that are experiencing changes and transitions and growth and opportunity from the patient side, but also from the other people that you've got to please, which is the staff side, right? So you've got to kind of be able to exactly, and you do it really well, and I love that about you. So let's talk a little bit about GVAS. You're going to be on a panel, and you were chosen for this panel because of your vast expertise. So tell us a little bit about those who will be attending that panel will learn from you and the others on it.
Well, I have to tell you, I was blown away with the panelists in our discussion. So we're focusing on how to build a new practice. And we really go the whole gamut from finding your real estate, where you want to be, what's your location, to what you're going to buy as far as lasers, devices, inventory, how you'll think about your EMR system and your sort of digitization of your practice so that from day one you have everything buttoned up and really well done. We went into how you get trained by other physicians and nurses to become a really great injector or a great provider in general. And then lastly, how to do a big kickoff event, how to do an event, make it profitable, track your earnings, which kind of goes back again to the EMR part. So we really look at the full 360 viewpoint of a new practice owner. And I think what we offer is some, to your point, real world experience of you're going to hear that you should do this, but in reality, maybe not. This is far more important for you. So we had a really great discussion about, should you buy or rent a practice? Should you get a big EMR with everything involved or lots of small pieces? We just had a really, really thorough discussion as a group. And I think if you're a new practice owner, you need to come to it and just listen to these people who've been doing this for a long time, who are experts in their area. I think to be a generalist is great, but to be an expert in something and be able to share that knowledge, it's a game-changing difference for a practice owner to hear from an expert in an area and go do that thing, as opposed to just like general knowledge. So our panel is good, make sure you come to it, but the overall agenda looks absolutely phenomenal for the entire event. I can't wait to watch maybe all 48 hours straight if I can make it work, but it looks incredible.
Right, grab your coffee, your tea, your energy drink, whatever will keep you awake. I agree with you. And I love that you are offering that experience on that panel to say, what do you need with your infrastructure, right? Because if you don't have a good foundation, the back of the house isn't strong, the front of the house is to be kind of a little bit of a facade. So I really love that you're going to take those attending your panel session through those key areas that they should be focusing on their practice. And I would even say, even if you're not brand new or just considering getting into medical aesthetics, it never hurts, because if you're doing the same thing over and over, to learn a fresh perspective. So I even think about, you know, those who may have established practices that are looking for new, fresh ideas or a way to find solutions for things that they found challenging in those areas that you just covered. So no matter where you are in practice, sit in on the session for you know, the new medical spas or opening of your new medical aesthetic practice with Tiphany and her co-panelists. And I know that you're going to learn a lot. And the why behind it, I have no doubt will be shared, because it's not just the what, but it's the why and the how, that when we attend conferences and we speak to those who are taking time away from their day and their weekends for us, it's something you can execute on. And I know that you guys will deliver that for sure.
You know, I think it's interesting with the virtual audience, having just come off a virtual conference, people who come to a virtual conference are really invested in learning. You know, we often see in live conferences, it's a lot of fun networking and social hours. You know, you get the whole experience. With virtual, you really elected to come and learn. So I think that oftentimes the chat, the questions, the dialogue is so much richer in a virtual environment. And so the fact that we have the chatting afterwards, the live chat, I think is fantastic. We can really engage with the audience and get questions answered. So if you're committing to coming to watch me, my commitment to you is that I'll do the best I can to make it worthwhile for you and of high value. So I'm hoping that we have a phenomenal panel with lots of great chats after to get some of those tough questions answered.
And I encourage everybody, I'm glad you brought that up about the chat, because it's so important to be able to have access to speakers. And if you think about it, if you do go to a live conference, you don't always have that Q&A time. You don't always have that intimate conversation when you can say, hey, can you expand upon something you shared? Or I have this concern that you didn't address. How would you approach it? And that is something you don't get at the face-to-face conferences that you do at these virtual conferences. And your Aesthetic Next conference was fantastic. I was able to attend that as well. I do miss the collegiality and the coffees and cocktails and hugs and handshakes for sure. But I think our industry as a whole, through GVAS and Aesthetic Next and ASDS and all these other conferences actually taking place and that have pivoted in a moment's time, because putting a conference together is at a minimum a 12-month production, but within less than 6 months, everyone has turned it around. So we couldn't have predicted that we would be in a virtual world for this, going forward. But if we look at predictions, because I value and you have a pulse on the business and the numbers behind it and the trends, is there anything that you see as far as in the future of aesthetics that it will be kind of interesting to come to fruition?
I'm going to break this up into parts because I think there's lots of interesting things coming. So one, I'd say from the product perspective, we're going to see a lot of new products. I have the fortune of doing some consulting work with companies who are bringing new things to the market. So I think there's going to be an amazing 2021 full of really crazy new different products. But I think part of that long term is this couture idea, mixing, like an HA and a PLA, or mixing all these different fillers and combos and toxins together. I think we're seeing this really boutique or couture idea around filler and toxin that is basically new for the US. It's happening in Europe far more often, but in the US for sure, it's a big shift for us. So we're going to see some more combination things being delivered. But I think body contouring will be the biggest thing that we'll see in 2021. It's just getting bigger and bigger, which is to be expected, right? If you think about the face, if you're concerned about surgery, you go for non-surgical. Body's no different. I'm concerned about surgery, I go for non-surgical. So we're seeing new innovations with all these different companies, with muscle, with fat, with things like cold sculpting. There's a lot of things happening there, but that'll continue to grow in my opinion. And even things like threads too. So the big things I see right now, really body contouring, threads, and this like couture or boutique filler injection stuff.
I love how you turn it into a fashion statement. Of course you do. So cool. Tiphany is always on point with her fashion, and I love how she even made that a part of her prediction for future products. You're awesome.
Well, it is, right? It's custom just to you, bioidentical, if you will. I think the other part of the industry, so if we see the product side really growing and changing and developing, I think on the business side, we're seeing a major shift right now. And we can thank COVID for this, in my opinion, which is the one good thing that came out of it. We're looking at our business as a true business. And so as an industry, we've often been sort of like a makeshift, get our practice open, get patients in. We'll think about the business later when we're slower, we've got lessons going on. Now it's become the focal point. We're looking at our inventory. Are we using, a LIFO, a FIFO, just in time? If we're thinking about our books and our COGS and our cost of company, we're really focusing on the numbers for the first time for many of us in a long time. So I think we're going to see stronger, better businesses, more sustainable businesses that really help us to stay alive when we weather these kind of bad storms we're weathering now in a sense. But also this idea of these bigger conglomerates, these like chains and franchises. You're starting to see 5, 7, 10 locations for a particular med spa chain. They're getting bigger and bigger. So we're seeing a lot more, collective groups emerging as an industry, which I think gives us more purchasing power. We can leverage ourselves more with vendors to get better pricing. So we'll start to drive the vendors versus the vendors driving us, which has been kind of our industry historically. I think the big part about this, as you think about a virtual conference too, is the role that vendors play long term. If you think about an Aesthetic Next and GVAS, the vendors who come to these conferences are investing a ton of money to be virtual as well. They're looking at resources for your practices that are digital, that can be easily uploaded and used, that have an ROI for you as a practice owner. They're thinking of innovative new products and ways to help you grow. They spend as much time worrying about a practice growing as a practice owner worries about a practice growing. So I think that as we go into 2021 and beyond, the vendors during COVID helped people to stay alive. And we realized quickly how much we depend on their expertise and their partnership. And so I think as we look at 2021, I'm looking at companies like Evolus, for instance. They're doing all these packets for their, for their groups around staying alive, getting better and bigger and more profitable. Allergan the same, Galderma, other companies. Like the partnership there, I think, is a big part of our long-term goal as an industry. So we can, in a sense, be stronger together, not to be, contrite, but be stronger together as an overall industry group.
And I agree with all of those predictions. And, by day, I'm the senior director of professional relations at Colorescience, and, having experienced what that's like for our partners and seeing our company pivot and shift and support and seeing how skincare, which I have had the pleasure of starting my career in skincare 20 years ago and now being back in skincare for the past 3 years. It was always sometimes looked at as passive income or a nice to have, not a need to have. And I saw many practices actually have their only source of revenue because they could not have patients in the door, which was being able to offer products that they could curate for their patients, offer a customized experience using telehealth, right? Leveraging technology and keeping in touch with them and allowing them to at least maintain some level of either the results they were achieving through the treatments that they had, and protecting them obviously from further damage. So I see that shift was
You know.
huge for practices.
I love skincare. And I think as we think about the 4 to 5 pillars in our industry, skincare has firmly made its place. She has shown up to the party in her party dress, because we have realized during COVID that without skincare, to your point, people would have ceased to exist. And I think the good part about that is you guys at Colorescience are innovating new products, new ideas, new science, new research. You guys are also very data driven. So we're seeing the skincare industry also pivot to be more medical in a sense, with better science, better studies, more design thinking around, we're all medical people here. How does this look and sound for our patients? And so I believe skincare will continue to keep growing and growing. And thank you to our skincare vendors for keeping us all alive during COVID. We owe you one, or a lot, frankly, a lot.
We're so happy. I never doubted that our industry would go away. We would see this dip and this change that was unprecedented. Even people stopped comparing it to 2008 because it wasn't the same, because nobody shut their doors. But I truly believe that the passion, the intelligence from a physician perspective, a practice perspective, from industry perspective, all rallied together for the greater good to make sure that our industry and those who have dedicated, many of them, our lives to this space would be able to come out of it stronger. And I'm excited that your session at GVAS will help those that are just getting started, those that need a refresh, and those that are just looking for ideas to implement to make them better. We'll be able to connect with you and your fellow panelists at GVAS. Well, before we sign off, and again, thank you so much for spending time in a busy day. I know that you are in high demand. If somebody wants to learn more about you, Tiphany, how can they find you before the conference?
Well, you can certainly go to my Instagram, which is probably the best way, and it is at Dr. Tiphany, Tiphany Lopez. You can DM me at any point for any help that you ever need. We also have a great website, aestheticrecord.com, which if you chat us on our little chat bubble or send us an email, I'll get that directly and be able to respond back to you. But you can certainly always get me on Instagram or on our website, or you can email me at tiphany@aestheticrecord.com. And I love to hear from people who have questions about compensation models and new practices and EMR integrations. I'm happy to entertain all your questions and help you as best I can, because to your point, Alisha, we're kind of all in this together. So if I can help somebody do a little bit better off, then it all comes back, to the whole industry and hopefully benefits all of us. So please reach out to me. I'd love to have you follow.
That's awesome. And we will, in the comments for this video, make sure that we post links to you, and as well as Aesthetic Record. And you can still obviously grab your spot at GVAS. We're still a few weeks away, so there is definitely, and the nice thing about virtual is you don't reach a capacity, right? Because you actually are not limited by time and space. So again, Tiphany, always a pleasure. Every moment I get to spend with you and be surrounded by your brilliance. And you are one of my favorite humans. And I thank you for your time and look forward to seeing you at GVAS.
Me as well. And by the way, the intergalactic pod, reserve yours. That is the coolest thing I've ever seen. So I'm looking forward to it. And so good to see you, Alisha, even if it's virtual. Missing you in person, but hopefully soon.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Tiphany. Bye-bye, everybody.